This is good. 28 years ago or something, I was so spectacularly late for a Blur interview because my wife and her friend had decided that I could take them to Reading Festival and back to Manchester Square.
Yeah.
And then we met in Windsor afterwards. So that's a bloody long time ago.
Yeah, it really is.
And I think, the interesting thing is if I listen to this record now, it seems like, you're always speaking to various people, and I don't know, that's your voices, your different voices.
Yeah.
But it's a record that speaks, in my perception, to someone like me who's been along on the journey for a while.
Exactly. I mean, I try to, when I write solo records, I try to write them for my brothers and sisters, you know what I mean? It's like, because when it becomes a solo record, it should somehow express how you feel, and and it's a. I like it. I like that deal, that Faustian pact with myself occasionally.
Yeah.
It makes the whole thing a joy to perform, and I get to have a very nice life when I'm doing those gigs. I've got a brilliant band, and I can just sit and play the piano or Wurlitzer, or do a bit at the front and have fun at the front. You know what I mean? I have a choice. So
that's the other thing, listening back to Everyday Robots, I remember the big difference between that record and the live show. When I heard the live show, I said, I want that record again, like that. And now it seems more like you've already incorporated that dialogue with the other musicians into this album already. Is that fair to say?
Well, it was always going to be something that could shapeshift. I mean, when you start, with this.
An dieser Stelle kramt Damon Albarn sein iPad hervor und zeigt mir Bilder der isländischen Wildnis vor seinem Studiofenster.
Start with this as your starting point. If you can't write something decent to this, you're a fucking idiot. Like that.
Yeah.
That, when you wake up and you're sitting at the piano to that every day.
So this is Iceland, or is it?
That's my view from my window in Iceland.
Yeah. So you've got a piano. I just have to say that so I remember it when there's a piano, and what's that? Is that a Hammond or?
That's an old Hammond.
Yeah.
It's 50s Hammond and my piano. This was brought in, and behind this there'd be like there were like double bass players, cello, violin,
trombone, with you behind
bass
you.
Trombone, French horn, and we were all playing
to the landscape.
Yeah, and literally,
well, that's the vibe I hear.
Well, exactly. Well, that's what I mean. Yeah. That is it, isn't it? Yeah. You know what I mean? Oh, that's a great vibe. For a record. I love records like that. Landscape. You know what I mean? Yeah. We like records like that. Like Mercury Rev's album's got that colour. It's blue. It's a blue record.
Sitting here, and there's a picture of Tony Allen in your shelf. So
actually, I put it there because when we were doing our ventriloquist stuff, Paul and I.
Yeah.
We got Tony one, but it wasn't quite.
It's not quite right. No.
It's not quite right. So, that is right. That's absolutely right.
The way that John Clare poem dealing with death, with the past. It was Tony Allen the person you thought?
There is a link to it, but I mean, John Clare's singing to a younger man. I mean, not singing, but writing to a younger man, I believe.
Yeah.
So I'm not doing that. But I mean, the spirit of Tony was imbued with such youth and brightness that, in a way, I find that when you're singing about people, it's not really directly to them, because that wouldn't be enough. You know what I mean? It's got to identify some strange emotion that you're feeling.
Yeah.
Not really be too self-conscious about the subject.
You were gone.
The emotion that I felt is certainly like we're at this age now, because your brothers and sisters and you, where we have to deal with that kind of loss, and we have to deal with the loss of youth. And there's also lines in there like about the beach where you played with your children, and there's a certain melancholy that you get when your children grow up and you kind of lose their childhood selves.
Oh yeah, I mean
Yeah.
the Cormorant is a really powerful song, I think.
Yeah,
And
I think so too. Yeah.
you know, it's weird when in the run-up to expressing something like that, there's a lot of anxiety. But the wonderful thing about song is that somehow that very sort of personal expression is transported to a different part of the brain, maybe, and there it's a more considered thing, you know. And I think that's what good songs are about, you know.
One of my favourite lines that jumped out at me was, "I'm a pathetic intruder into the abyss."
Yeah, I do like that one.
Yeah. So this is what I took from it, is that we end up being over 50, and we end up looking slightly over the precipice, you know. But we think, you know, I'm not, you know, I'm still a child, you know. I'm not mature enough for where I am. Is that kind of what you're thinking?
I think that's it because it's a lovely image. It offers everyone their own interpretation.
You would say that. the old get out clause.
Yeah, it's not because I just think why I wrote those words maybe not as interesting as what other people might read into them. And I'm not selfish with it. It's not something with a fixed abode. You know what I mean?
Yes, it can be many different things.
Yeah.
I just had this conversation with my son yesterday about how my views have changed over the decades, and that I now think a lot of what I used to look down on, like hack work, both by songwriters and session musicians, I now realise are some of the most expressive and emotive songs ever written.
Well, you see, this is the thing, you know, it's like... Exactly.
But having mentioned my son, I also thought about, because he's got a Gorillaz poster on the wall, and I remember him. He's got that now. He's 22, and he grew up with that as a baby, you know. And it was interesting because I know I'm not allowed, but I did play him the record as well. And so it doesn't just speak to your brothers and sisters, but it's also the weird thing, you know, with the Gorillaz being a cartoon band that never changed their age, as cartoons never do. There's a parallel narrative, isn't there, with the audience?
Yeah, I know. It's funny. It's nice. I enjoy singing everything to a younger generation. It's much more, you know, it's a different relationship, obviously.
While that younger generation from the past can follow you here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, we're the same. And hopefully by now we've all realised we are all the same. And it's like, you know, this is our brief moments on Earth, and, you know, some of the silly ideas we had when we were young, you know, must be so obvious that they were silly, you know. And actually, I was having a conversation yesterday about this, and it's like, do we have license to criticise the young? Or criticise is not the right word. It's more like to have a conversation about cause and effect. Because when you're young, you haven't seen any effect. You're just emotionally running with cause, you know. But as you're older, you've seen cause and effect, so you can have empathy on both sides of the argument to a greater or lesser degree, depending on the circumstance. We certainly mustn't not have challenging conversations with our young. It's not just our duty; it's part of nature for the whole concept of regeneration to continue in one species. It has to have that somehow involved in it.
I would like to know more about what was silly ideas when you were young, because I remember your younger self being quite an analytical, very combative mind.
Yeah, I think I still am a bit, but I mean, I can laugh at it this now. I can't, you know what I mean? I can see. God, even though I might be right about something, I can see that you don't necessarily need to say it quite in that way, you know.
Yeah, I know through my daughter that there's younger girls who really like your music,
Right.
And I saw a conversation online, which I didn't look for because it's terrible when you start looking for it. That just gets awful.
I don't have anything online, so I can't look for
But I did see where it just turned up on my Twitter timeline, where there was one old interview of yours, which was in this typical ironic, quasi-hyper-sexist fashion. Do you know what I mean?
Hang on, say that again.
Yeah. This sort of like where you're talking about tits and that and whatever.
Yeah.
And I remember...
Back in the day.
Back in the day.
Right.
And I remember how before Oasis came... I'm sorry that I mentioned it. Why did I do that? But
okay.
To me, it's a placeholder. It's a placeholder for something.
Mm.
Before...
It was real at the time.
Yeah, exactly.
It was.
Before the actual unexcused sexism came along, when we thought, being young, that the irony was obvious.
Yes, of course,
Yeah.
of course. Yeah, but
I remember
exactly.
that. Yeah.
Exactly, but there comes a point where you can't behave like that anymore because it ceases to have that cachet, and so the young start censoring us.
Yeah.
Because they're concerned that we're going to come...
I never knew he said stuff like that. And I look at it from nowadays perspective, I can understand it. Yeah, to you that would seem totally outrageous.
Right, so you're saying they're investigating the past.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Okay,
I never knew he said stuff like that. Oh, I don't know if I like him anymore. You know what I mean? Because they can't see what it felt like then. Mm.
Right. Okay, what she has to understand is that... How do I put this? Back in the 90s, I was a young, pretty boy, you know what I mean? And life had a different energy to it, as anyone who's young and in that position knows. Mm-hmm. And then you've got to look at it in... If you're going to make a judgment about the past, then you have to do history, you have to do your research. If you saw how I behaved within the spectrum... You'll see that the things I was doing, and if you followed the work, you'd see they'd all contradict, and there'd never be some consistent kind of validation of anything. The sort of, you could say that I was commenting on the sexism, on the nationalism, on the,
Well, to me, it was
all I can say is that I was young. That's interesting. I mean, that's interesting. That is interesting.
Yeah, to me, it's
because that's what history is.
Yeah.
How do any of us understand anything in history? And whether we like it or not, my friend, we're part of history now.
I know.
We're not part of the present.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know.
So,
and it's a funny thing to have arrived at a point where there's generations now of grown-up people who no longer understand the world that that kind of comes at you really quickly.
Yeah.
Remember last time I interviewed you, we were talking about the word woke.
Yeah, well...
Which you at that time hadn't heard. I kind of explained to you what woke was. I seem to remember. And now, like 3 years later, whatever, we're at the arse end of this culture war stuff, and we've just had Nadine Dorries appointed culture secretary, someone who's made it her, like, all these... part of her career to attack people like us, basically.
I know it's not great. It's not great. I mean, I'm still trying to sort of assimilate it, because the colour of it as a visual. If I was going to, it's very. It's got a mask on it. You know what I mean? And the mask it's very abstract now, but it's in black, white, and red.
Bit like the swastika flag.
Just a bit. Yeah. I don't know what it is. It's not even anything like that. But it's like that. It's
well, they're kind of the colours of propaganda, aren't they? They're
it feels like yes. It just feels there's some yes, exactly that sort of just. I mean, it's fascinating that that permanent exhibition about the Weimar in Berlin. Mm-hmm. Really, what very interesting period in time, because such a progressive mindset in Weimar, and then suddenly something very true. I've got a book. A few people going, "Why have you got that book?" And I said, "Well, it's really interesting. It's about culture in Nazi Germany. Actually, what people were listening to, paintings they liked, books they liked.
Well,
always, it's so important to know your history and understand this is what I'm trying to say. It's kind of for everyone, and sometimes I feel that a lot of information these days is expressed so emotionally by people, but they haven't really given it any breadth. They haven't seen the bigger picture. They've just seen what's on their screen, and that if you think that this illusion that the size of the world and history of the world can come from something as small as a telephone, and you just put the telephone down and you look around you, right? How about just understanding your vision in front of you entirely? That seems to me to be, or try to at least aspire to that.
I do see the parallel between the Weimar Republic and now one parallel which is kind of obvious is, you had Goebbels saying this famous thing about when he thinks of culture he reaches for his revolver, and then you had also the exhibitions, because you mentioned what kind of art what were they listening to, is how the Nazis were kind of obsessed. They had this exhibition of Entartete Kunst where they showed all the artists that they despised, like the degenerate art, basically.
Yes. And
that is kind of reminiscent, is how these people can't stop banging on about what they find degenerate, and so this culture wars thing.
I've never really understood the deep antipathy of the conservative to the arts. It's really strange. I don't understand, because some of them
they feel threatened by it,
but they're educated, a lot of them, and secretly they love it.
Michael Gove on Late Review, do you remember?
Well, a good example off his tits dancing in a Dundee disco, having a very good time. Good on him. Fucking great. I much rather see someone enjoying themselves dancing than kind of listening to them not giving the whole truth. Smoke and mirrors is outrageous in politics.
Talk about the lockdown anymore for good reason, because we want to put it behind us. But
it's not over.
In that record, it's not over, is it?
No, weirdly, I thought I finished this. I did it really quickly, actually, because I had a long time to think about it, and I had all this amazing rehearsal music, just from mics up with us just playing. Beautiful atmospheres to keep me in the place. But I recorded it down in Devon in January and February.
So you wrote and rehearsed in Iceland, then recorded in Devon?
No. I did the writing I did in between, but rehearsed and just played. There weren't any songs really fully finished in any sense of word in Iceland. I just decided that I couldn't wait. I'd lose this wonderful thing that I had because of the escalation of time if I didn't. So within this amazing pause that was given to everybody, I wanted to get it done in then, and I wanted to put it out.
That was with musicians?
Two
musicians.
Simon Tong and Mike Smith. Yeah, everything else, which the three of us made it in 6 weeks, maybe less than that. So living in Devon in the cold, in the winter, by the sea, duffel coats on, steam in the studio, mittens. It's 23rd of March, my birthday in Devon. Nice start to the day.
Yeah, it's a lovely birthday.
Positive. I mean, wow,
incredible.
And that's the studio.
And that's the same studio as in the Boiler Room session.
Yeah. So that's 2020. We went down there then. It's another just under a year later that I'm doing. So
that Iceland was in 2019, was it?
Yeah.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
So that's quite a long time in the making. This. So you did all the new Gorilla stuff and so on in between, and this was just.
I did that all down there in Devon. And I left this until we get to
Er tastet sich auf seinem iPad vor, von der idyllischen Landschaft in Devon in Richtung ziemlich schauerlicher Bilder der schwer verletzten, halb abgetrennten, wieder zusammengenähten Kuppe seines rechten Zeigefingers.
Oh no.
I stuck my finger on, I'd done some pesto on Christmas Eve, and I'd done yoga as well, so I was feeling really relaxed, nice, just have a nice simple little bit of pasta and then have a nice meal in the evening. So I made the fresh pesto, and instead of tasting it from the bowl, I decided to stick my finger in the mixer and then press the button. Anyway, that's what happened. So that wasn't a great Christmas.
It looks like it's almost healed now. Does it? Is it back to normal?
Oh yeah. I mean, still a bit, but that came right off, and the bone broke.
Oh, for Christ's sake! That is an important finger if you want to play the.
Yes, it was
keyboard.
important that it came back, and then so here we go. So then
fainting.
I go back down to Devon, and it's starting to heal a bit.
Yeah,
but still really not very nice. But it's nice there. Oh. Anyway.
Well, thanks very, very, very much.
My pleasure.
Yeah.